Doyal to come on. Hey, Rasika. And we're going to talk about the 100 Day Project because the 100 Day Project is a very long marathon. Cut it into segments, and so today is day 25, which means it's a quarter in, and that is super exciting. Is Doyle on? Doyle!
Hey,
Hey, Doyle, welcome. Good to see
I'm
you on
here.
here.
Good to see you
Welcome,
too.
welcome. Oh,
Oh,
this is so
hello from
exciting.
Venezuela. Good to see you from Venezuela.
Yeah, hello. Doyle is in Brooklyn. I'm in Florida. And we're here to chat about the 100 Day Project. So I'm excited. This is very spontaneous. We'll have
Super
like a very
spontaneous.
super spontaneous. Basically, I
Yeah,
was texting Doyle a few days ago just about the 100 Day Project. And I was like, let's talk about this. This is
yeah.
so interesting. This is what I'm always talking. Let's just make it live.
Yeah.
So here
I've
we
been trying
are.
to schedule an Instagram
Yeah,
live with Rukmini for like weeks or
months.
months. She's like, I'm really busy. I don't know if I have time for it. I'm not really sure. And then she saw him doing a 100 Day Project. She's like, I've got time on Wednesday. Let's do it.
Yeah. Sorry, Doyle has worked with me for years, so he knows how I work. He knows that when the
Spontaneity is
inspiration
queen.
strikes, yeah, I just do it.
Yeah,
So what I'm going to do, Doyle, is I'm going to just introduce you. I have a list of questions. I wrote it analog
great.
style, and we'll just take it from there. As
Awesome.
people are coming in, if you want to just put your name, where you're coming from, if you know anything about the 100 Day Project, if you've done it before, if you are doing it, if you have no idea what we're talking about, welcome. It'll be a fun conversation either way. So Doyle is my friend that I've both worked with and just known for years now. And Doyle is doing his third 100 Day Project, which is really amazing. And we really bonded over these projects. I remember when I did one
Yeah.
of my first, I shared it with you, and you've always encouraged me. And then it's been super cool seeing yours. And I've really loved your recent project. And when we texted
Mm.
a little bit and went back and forth, we were just sharing about how interesting it is. What are the challenges? Like becoming kind of like insta famous a little bit through like a social media is like an interesting phenomenon too. So we'll talk about that also. Anything else, Doyle, that I can share?
I think that sounds great. I've always loved
Okay.
your project. I first found out about your 100 Day Project when you had just moved to New York and you were kind of like a quiet, little,
Yeah.
unassuming, sweet girl that would just kind of was sitting. We were having like a gathering at a friend's apartment. And, I just kind of met you, moved to New York. You were being a graphic designer for where, the Bhakti Center where we were
Yeah.
working and serving together. And it was like, she's like, what are you up to? She's like, I just published my book. And I was like, you have a book? She's like, yeah, I took my 100 Day Project and I put it into a book and I bought it right there on the spot.
Yeah, you're like my first customer.
I still have it on my shelf. And
Uh,
that's when I first learned about 100 Day Projects.
yeah, that I remember that. That was a lot of fun. And then here you are. I roped you in. So I want to hear
Totally.
about your experience.
Yeah, I do the 100 Day Project really because of your inspiration, because you kind of
Yeah.
like, I'm like, it's my connection to Rukmini.
Yeah. Thanks. At some point, I feel like I am like harassing people each year at this point, but I'm glad when it's taken well.
I appreciate
Um,
it.
do you want to share a little bit about the project you're doing this year? And then we'll dive into some questions.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll share about the project I'm doing this year, but it's something that, as you just mentioned, it's my third project, and for those that don't know, the 100 Day Project is something where you commit to doing something every day for 100 days straight. And the idea is that you do it every single day for 100 days, but more often than not, it turns out that you miss a day or you skip a day, or it takes
A
150
lot.
days or 200 days or a few hundred days to sometimes finish a 100 Day Project. But
Exactly.
um, the first time that I did it, what I loved so much about it was the idea of doing something every day, regardless of how simple or imperfect it seemed. And so the idea of, just for me, it was really, you're supposed to do something every day and then you're supposed to post it on social media. And so that's kind
Hmm.
of like your accountability factor. And normally the process of sharing something on social media can be so crafted and so kind of premeditated,
And like
because
curated and
curated,
perfected.
because you're putting
Yeah.
something out that people are going to see, and it's going to be that's the nature of social media. Everything is judged. Right now I see a bunch of hearts
Yeah.
coming up. People are liking, like,
Yeah.
oh, they
Yeah.
must have liked something I just said. What do they like that I just said? How do I say more of that?
Yeah.
Why have the hearts stopped coming in? You know what I mean? Like,
Thanks for
and
keeping the
then you
hearts
realize,
going.
like, oh, Instagram is intentionally like clumping those hearts and likes
Yeah.
together to give you a burst of dopamine. It's like, I'm getting caught in this whole system. And
Yeah.
so for me, what I love so much about it is that it took so much of that, it gave so much relief and took so much of the anxiety away of that. Like, my commitment is just to show up every day and post something as grandiose or as simple as it may be. Sometimes it's curated and premeditated, and sometimes it's not. And because it's a 100-day project, like, this is one of the questions we'll talk about later, like, it's not something that I premeditate on. It's like you're just doing it every day. And so I'm not scheduling like 10 days ahead of time and then letting them go,
Yeah.
which a lot of times you do with posts. So
Or
anyway, so I really
strategizing what is the best. You literally have no
totally,
time for that. You're just
yeah.
creating.
And so I recognize that in order for me to continue doing something like this, because a lot of people will do 100 days of songs or 100 days of artwork, 100 poems. In order for me, it had to be something that I knew would be meaningful for me and that I would want to do regardless if anybody saw it or commented on it or liked it. Like,
Mm,
it had to be a journey of self growth and transformation for
yeah,
me to be inspired to keep doing it. So the first one that I did was about appreciations for other people. I thought like,
I
wow,
love
this would
that
be
one.
a meditation for me to do appreciation for other people. And so every single day I gathered a cluster of photos from other people. And I think the first day of that, I think I did it for like my dad or something who like passed
Yeah, I
away 12 years
remember.
ago. And then I did it family. And then it was like, I really had to think of like, how many people am I going to appreciate? And then, um, I'd write a poem for them, and
Yeah,
I would
it
cluster
was a
their
lot.
photos, and then I would share it. And then, the next one I did was I did 100 days of just for today, which was
Mm,
a saying that I learned in 12-step programs in Al-Anon and ACOA, which is programs for dealing with family dysfunctions or codependent or family dysfunction relationships. And so there's, one of my favorite slogans is one day at a time. And they have these
mm,
little daily readers where it's just for today, like, because we make these big commitments to change and
yeah.
to growth. And then it's like, it becomes overwhelming. It's like, just for today, it's okay. Or just for today, this or that. And so I did 100 days of that. And then this year I was like, what am I going to do? And the 100-day project came early. It's like
Yeah, I
it's like
know.
April, and it came early. And I wanted to do, like, I was thinking prayer, but I was like, 100 days of prayer, that seems kind of common or vague, or, I mean, what does that really mean? And
Mm,
I wanted to be a little bit more focused. And so I went to another 12-step term of let go and let God, which is the
okay.
idea of releasing something, releasing a preconceived notion that I have about myself, about the world,
Mm,
about an attachment to outcomes that I have, like, kind of releasing my concept about how life is supposed to be, how I'm
I
supposed to be, how
see.
others are supposed to be, and kind of like learning to let go, but not just let go in like this free fall suspended place, but let go and
Mm,
let God, like, invite God or a higher power into my life. And I think
wow.
God is such a triggering word for a lot of people. And so we use
Hmm.
the universe, we use higher power, we use whatever. But
Yeah.
really, I think a lot of people are definitely connecting with something higher than themselves. And so, in inviting that in through meditation, through prayer, through kirtan, through journaling, through nature, whatever it might be. And so, I
Hmm.
thought, like, what would it be for me to start to just, and I decided that I didn't want to just like, I wanted a prompt, or I wanted something to spur the meditation. And so I took a verse from various yoga texts or Vedic scriptures, or um, from the Bhagavad Gita specifically, but there's also different um, Vedic Puranas
Mm,
or ancient spiritual literatures that I would pull from. I've mostly been doing the Bhagavad Gita, and I would use that as a prompt, and then I would take that and I just started saying, God, and then I would just say a prayer, may, and usually it was trying to something about self-reflection or transformation. So that's basically what this 100-day project is. It's 100
mm.
days of letting go and letting God, and it manifests in the form of a prayer that is inspired by a verse or a quote or a writing from some spiritual sacred literature. And that's what
Mm,
it
that's
is.
so beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Because I was thinking, I was just saying 100 days of prayer, but it's so much more than that too. Just like how the inspiration of where it's coming from, that you're taking something so personal for you and learning how to let go and let God. But
Totally.
what I love so much is all your projects are so personal. Like what you
Mm.
said, the 100 days of appreciation. There was someone who had a question earlier saying, how did that affect your mental health? Which maybe I can just ask briefly, the impact of doing 100 days of appreciation. What was that like? Oh no, it's cutting off.
Sorry, guys, for a second. I was getting a notification. I was like, let me put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and then it ended up disturbing the whole thing anyways.
Oh no.
So, anyways, I
That's
put
okay.
on Do
That's
Not Disturb.
my
I
fault.
realized I didn't put on Do Not Disturb because I didn't want to get like a message or a phone call or anything. Anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's fine. I think my internet is doing this thing that it always does and that I
It was
warned you.
it was
So,
me. It was me.
okay. But I was just saying, there was a question of the 100 days of appreciation and
Yeah.
like, how did that impact your mental health? So just quickly, like, what are some of the benefits you're seeing from doing these projects? How did it affect you personally? Because they
Oh,
are
for
such
sure.
personal projects.
That's a great question because that's the whole reason why I did it in the first place. And the appreciation that was like, wow, how would my life change if every day I was thinking and trying to see the best in others, especially because we live in such a world where, especially like in the last year, we've been disconnected because of the pandemic and we've gone online.
Yeah.
It's been magnified, but it's always been there. In the age of social media, I've always said to myself and said to others, I always felt like social media, it's like a breeding ground of envy in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot of good
Wow.
that comes from it for sure, but it's really a breeding ground for envy and comparison because you are looking at what everyone else is doing with their lives, and most of us have a narrative of negative self-talk. Most of us
Hmm.
have developed that. In my experience and people that I know, most people have a narrative of self-talk that when we see somebody else doing something great, it normally sparks a sense of something negative about ourselves. Well, I'm not
Mm.
that good, or I should be somewhere else in my life, etc. And there's this kind of awkward, strange mix of like appreciation and respect and inspiration and like self-doubt and insecurity and like shame, but like I'm not where they are or something like that. Or whether we see people commenting on their relationships, on their career, on their, whatever it might be. And so for me, I felt like, wow, I don't want to live like that. I really
Yeah.
want to live in this mood of abundance
God.
and like really what does it mean? And we see this oftentimes and through so many like sacred literatures like the Bhagavad Gita, which I was quoting, and so many
Hmm.
other sacred texts and books and writings and teachings that um, even in yoga culture, we have this, the word namaste, which is, literally like the divine spark in me is celebrating and honoring the divine spark in you.
Hmm.
And so what
Wow.
does it look like for me to turn the narrative of comparison, of self-doubt, of envy, etc., and what would it look like to really just genuinely appreciate and wish well for others and to let
Mm.
them know it? Because
Yeah.
I think that happens a lot of times. We don't let people know it, and when we don't appreciate, I think lack of appreciation increases cultures of competition, because
Hmm.
sometimes competition is a vying of trying to show other people what we have and show our value and kind of push it in people's faces. But if we can create a culture of appreciation, then there's less need for competition because
Wow.
I feel seen. I don't
Yeah.
feel the need to one up you. I don't feel the need to like filter my photos to look a certain way because I'm feeling that appreciation from you genuinely, and it kind of lowers the guard. And so for me, I knew I wanted to live in that mood of appreciation, and I didn't want to live in a consciousness of competition, of poverty consciousness,
Yeah.
not like wealth poverty, but like mental and emotional poverty. I didn't want to live in a mode of insecurity and self doubt, and I really, 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 really wanted to get to a place where I'm rooting for others' success and wishing them well, and I want them to know it, that I'm there
Yeah.
and I'm appreciating it. So that was how it really was a big
Wow. That's
transformation
so
for me.
powerful.
And I mean, I'm still
Hmm.
working on it. It's not like I have now gotten rid of all
Yeah,
self
of
doubt and
course.
insecurity. It's a work in progress, but it was like, wow, what would that look like if every day that was my meditation? So it had
Wow.
a profound impact on me.
That's amazing, Doyle. That's so I resonate so much what you said. It's like social media is that breeding ground for envy. It's totally,
Yeah.
which could bring us to our next topic of like dealing with social media and all this. But I just love so much what you shared. Like that is such a hope for the future that we can create, like like whether it's art or anything that just helps
Yeah,
us root for each other. It's so
totally.
there's like this term I came across recently called shine theory, which I really love. And it's thrown around with like different friend circles. But the whole idea is like you shine so that you can encourage others to shine. There's like, you don't shine
Yeah.
unless others shine. And there's this real, like you said, like co-celebration rather than competition.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's so hard when I really feel like these systems of social media are designed for competition, are designed for
Totally.
us to feel insecure. And so that's why I have such a like conflicting feelings about doing something like the 100 Day Project, which can be so transformative. It can be amazing how you approach it. And then, of course, you share it on Instagram, you share it, and it's supposed to be helpful. And I think it can
Yeah.
be. Honestly, over the years, I've built a whole community from it, and I'm so grateful. But it can also harm us too. And so it's like a very,
Yeah.
like you're walking a really fine line between this. And I see a lot of people who are struggling with this. And I even struggle with it still. Like social media will really mess with your head because you want to perform. But the whole point
Yeah.
of the 100 Day Project is that you're not performing. Doyle, like all your examples are amazing, that they're like, you're looking for personal self growth, and the 100 Day
Yeah.
Project is a way for you to like just do it. It's not a way for you to
Yeah.
get mental. Like if you were doing any of these projects and it was like you were doing it for any other reason except your self growth, you would totally be like doubting yourself and trying to perfect
Yeah.
each post. But to set that aside and to just do it for the sake of doing it is
Totally.
powerful. But to also post it online can be an amazing way to share, connect, be vulnerable. And it can be an even greater way for us to be like self doubt, like to be like self conscious. So I had my
Yeah.
questions. I don't know if we'll get through all of them, but basically
Cool.
someone had said something similar, like this idea of like, do you ever doubt yourself when you're posting on social media? Do you
Yeah.
ever feel like you feel a little pathetic, self-conscious? Like, how do you deal with that and still post?
Yeah, for sure. I feel that 100%. And again, I think that I lean back into the idea that that's why whatever I'm doing as a project has to be something for. I think there's a few ways to answer that question. One is it goes back to the personal motivation, because
Yeah.
it's like if I'm posting for other people, it's unavoidable. I'm gonna live in that
Totally.
space of
It's
feeling
so true.
insecure, pathetic, etc.
Hmm.
And it's coming back. You know what? Like this is really a meditation for me. I just happen to be posting it online.
Yeah.
That's my accountability factor. But like I would do this even if I was just writing it for myself. And I
Hmm.
think that the posting it though, it's meant to sting a little bit. It's meant to
Yes.
hurt a little bit because it really is. It's a part of the ego dying in a sense.
Oh
It's a
my God,
part of
yes.
that part being stripped away from us, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm agreeing to this thing where I'm going to post and I'm relinquishing the need for it to be perfect, and I'm just
Yeah.
going for consistency because I'm going to show up. I mean, it's so easy because there's stories like, an example that's given. There was a study about like two different groups that were given the task to create a piece of art. I think it was a sculpting. They were doing
Mm.
pottery, and they both
Oh
had
yeah,
an
I've seen
hour to
this.
create like the best pot possible. And one
Hmm.
group was allowed to take as much time as they needed, but they only could create one pot, like one
Yeah.
one clay creation. And another group
Hmm.
was given time. They could make they it was more like a speed creation. Like they could make as
Yeah.
many as they wanted to, and then they could make a lot and they could choose which one to submit as their best. And the
Hmm.
best pieces consistently came from the group that was able to create more rather than the one group that took their time and
Wow.
sculpted it. Because in our effort to make something perfect, we're going to overthink things. And as opposed to if we're just creating continuous content, not all of them are going to be amazing, uh, beautiful pieces of art. Some of them are just going to be trial and error, but then amongst that, something beautiful will submerge. And I think about that oftentimes, like my favorite,
Such
like
a good example, by the way. Such a
artists,
good
like my
example.
favorite musicians, my favorite music groups, like
Yeah.
they have amazing songs. And then I look at some of their albums and I'm like, 10 out of these 12 songs are not very good.
Yeah.
But these two I love. And
Yeah.
most amazing musicians pump out tons of music, and they have 10, the best musicians maybe have 10, 20 hits, and they have hundreds of songs that a lot of people don't even know about. So it's not
Mm.
even like their greatest musicians or artists or movie, or every now and then I'll find out a movie that a movie actor made, and I'm like, I never heard of that. Like that wasn't a great performance. But it's like even the celebrities and the artists and the musicians and the actors and directors, etc. It's like not every piece is a masterpiece, but there's volume, and then there's something where we are allowed to explore and create and discover. So I would say give yourself the space to explore and discover, and take the pressure that everything has to be
Mm.
perfect. That's the point of it. And I think that the
Yeah.
motivation really comes like, I'm just like, for my appreciation one I did a couple years ago, I literally just appreciated I took photos of all the faucets in my
I
house, which
remember.
there are three. There's my shower, my bathroom sink, and my kitchen sink.
Yeah.
And I just said like the simple things. I'm appreciating the fact that I have water, which is incredible. And I just posted
Mm.
it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Such a good point, Doyle, about finding that motivation. I saw a few questions, and one person said, how do I navigate that fine line between wanting to perform and wanting to purely post my progress? And I think you answered it by kind of saying, like, it is such a fine line, and it comes down really to your motivation that you literally have to check in like every day. And sometimes our motivation won't be so pure. Like we naturally want that validation, and that's
Yeah.
okay. But then kind of coming back and being like, it's not sustainable. If I'm doing this just for the likes and just I'm going to burn myself out, I'm going to feel self-conscious, I'm going to feel full of doubt. And of course, we're kind of like swimming against the current because the current of Instagram and social media is to do that. So it takes a lot of courage to do the opposite. But like you said, it stings the ego. And I
Yeah.
fully believe that. And no one wants to do it, but it's so good for you. And that's why,
Yeah.
like, we all strive for perfectionism. But why? Perfectionism is just this veil of the ego to look a certain way. But when we can take that off, we kind of start becoming a little more raw, a little more human, and can really express ourselves genuinely. So for me,
Yeah.
also, like, my project this year is so much about it's just about like process over result because over the last few years I have gained a lot of success and I've learned to become known through my like obscure emotion series. But the thing is, I don't want to be stuck in that. I want to create that for sure. And that's what my audience really resonates with. But I want to feel like I'm using social media, not social media is using me. And lately I've been feeling social media is using me in the sense that I'm creating for social media, I'm performing. And so I just felt like, screw it. I want to learn digital painting. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to have some profound concept. It might emerge, but it's not what I'm just starting with. I'm literally
Yeah.
just picking up the canvas and I'm just seeing what comes. I don't have any plan for the day. I'm just going with it. And so
Yeah.
some days are beautiful and some days are not. And some days it looks the same as the day before. And I'm really letting go of that like desire to control my grid, to control what people are seeing. And even like my engagements have really gone down. And of course that can be disheartening, but I feel like for me, this is what I need. Like if I want to stay alive as an artist, I have to be okay also with my engagement
Yeah.
going down as long as I'm producing something that helps me feel like I'm growing. And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like I'm growing because I'm trying something new. I'm excited. Of course, like there were times where I had images that got 10,000, 20,000 likes, crazy. And now it's like 200. You know what? That's just what it is. It could be for
Mm.
different reasons. But it's like that kind of integrity to the craft is so important. And so that's what I think about the 100 Day Project is really like we're getting better at a craft, whether it's the craft of appreciation or writing
Yeah.
poetry or writing a prayer. Like that's what we're doing. But instead, we've forgot to be like craftsmen, if that makes sense, because we want that instant validation, instant gratification. But for me, it's coming back to like, no, I'm just practicing this thing and practicing a little animation and we'll see what comes from that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that also you're especially like, we talk about like engagement and like number of likes or comments, etc. And the one first thing I want to say, everything you do is beautiful. And I want you to
Yeah,
know
thank
that
you.
because they all are. There's just beautiful, more beautiful, and most beautiful when it
Yeah.
comes to your work. But I also think that for me, the meditation, especially this year, was that recognizing because there's sort of like, okay, there's the content we produce that is like, you can say for the masses, like for people, like what's going to have a general, generic, wide appeal that people are going to connect with. And then what I found is that there are people that I know that I have a personal connection with, or I know them through social media, or I know them in person. And it's like, part of me feels like, wow, sometimes this content is just for them. Like the content actually
Wow.
resonates with people that like are it's kind of like it's a different type of engagement. It may be smaller,
Yeah. Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
sometimes more meaningful. And it's
Totally.
for the people that it's not like, I'm not trying to think, what are people, I'm not thinking, what will people like? What are people looking for? What's going to help people? What are people going to respond to? What's going to appeal to people? And I'm just thinking, I'm sharing a piece of myself, and the people
Hmm.
that resonate with that, those are my people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Those are the
such a
people
better
that I
way to think
resonate
about it.
with. And it may just
Yeah.
be, it may just be so and so, you may not, it may just have a lot fewer likes or engagement or comments, but the ones that come in, it's like I get that, like that was really meaningful. Thank you so
Mm,
much for that. That was really powerful, as opposed to, thousands of likes of people that are just scrolling and like, okay, cool. You're actually going to start to get people who are really looking for authenticity and are going to
yeah.
relate to that. And so the engagement might be smaller, but it'll become much more meaningful. And that is
Mm.
sort of, I think, a theme of this project as well, is looking for meaningful engagement.
Yeah, that's so true. So beautiful and well said, because I think we have all this idea of like casting the wide net. How do I get the most people? How do I impact the most
Yeah,
people? But like you said, it kind of distills what we're trying to share. And if we just
totally.
focus like, who are those people who really are connected with me? Who are these 29 people on Instagram Live with us? That's amazing. Like, thank you for being here. They're
Yeah,
actually
I
interested in what we're
recognize some of
saying.
them. I'm like, Gloria from
Totally.
Calcutta. It's so good to see you. You're here.
Yeah.
Like, we have a
Teacher
connection now. That's good
Chandra.
stuff. My wife in New
Totally.
Jersey.
For sure. I'm so grateful just to see everyone. Oh, I'm seeing what Rasika's writing. Anyway, I'm just saying, totally relate. With the smaller amount of people, that just helps so much to, again, get over those blocks, get over that sharing. Like we have this sharing syndrome that everything, we share needs to reach a ton of people. And again, it's just so unhealthy. Rather building smaller pockets of community of people who you really engage with and really mean a lot to you
Yeah.
and vice versa. And so I totally agree with that. Yeah, so much to be said on this. If you want to say anything else on this topic of social media before I move on to another
Let's go ahead
question,
and get
but
to the next question, and some other stuff will come up.
okay, awesome. So we spoke a lot about the projects we're doing, why we're doing it, like coming from a place of integrity and like personal growth. That's what kind
Yeah.
of keeps us going. And then we shared also about social media and how to navigate that and really being able to post and share um, because because it comes from a place that's personal and it, the
Yeah.
motivation is clear. And also if it hurts the ego a little bit, that is also needed. And so the next one I was thinking would be kind of like how to keep going when you get tired. Like, what do you
Yeah.
do? What do you do to kind of keep the momentum? Because 100 days is a long time. And I have a lot to say about this. And so many people, this is like the number one question of like, I fell off the
Yeah.
bandwagon or I'm tired of my project or like, how do you keep getting inspired? So what would you say for
Yeah.
that?
It's a great, great question. And you said you had a lot to say, so I've usually been the first to answer. So would you like to answer first and share? And I'm happy to share afterwards if you'd like to say something.
Yeah, yeah. So this question, how to stay inspired. So what is so interesting about the 100-day project is that you build your own strategy to how you want to get to the goal. And so there are so many ways of doing it because we're all such different people. So some of us are those kinds of discipline we can show up every single day and do it. And some of us need breaks and need flow. And so I feel like if I was to rename the 100-day project, I would call it like the 100-day or however long you need project because like it is not about getting to the goal of 100 days. It's really about the process. It's about the
Yeah.
journey. And like, I feel like it's so good to like continuously check in about how are you doing, how are you engaging on the journey of 100 days. If you are bored, switch your idea. If you are tired, adjust a little bit, stay flexible.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if we stay really stringent and we're kind of like resisting but showing up anyway, okay, that could be nice, but what if we get like resentful a little bit? What if we start really disliking our project? Like that's going to show you can't sustain anything unless you have like inspiration and energy. And inspiration comes from like continuously kind of pivoting a little bit and saying,
Yeah.
okay, you know what? This isn't really working. Let me change a little bit. But the amazing thing is 100 days means you can't overthink it. You're doing something each day, or as much as you can. And so you kind of just show up and just kind of do, and you kind of are okay with things not being great. But what I'm kind of saying is finding your own rhythm is really important. I
Yeah.
like to tell people some years I start off and I recognize I need either ease or I need fire. And it's different. Some years I've taken over 300 days to do my project because I needed ease, I needed space. That is
Yeah.
really good for you to recognize. Some years, like this year, I have the time, I have the capacity, I need fire. So I'm doing it every day and I'm holding myself to it. So
Yeah.
it's just like this project is such a good way to self-manage and self-regulate. I feel like the benefits of the 100-day project can like touch all areas of our life. I mean, we can get so much better at a professional life and everything else because you learn to self-manage, you learn to self-regulate. You're
Yep.
constantly checking in like, do I have the capacity for a big long painting? No, I'll do a little sketch. And so you're in the process, if you kind of get what I'm saying. It's like you're
Totally.
dialoguing with your creativity. What do I have the
Yeah.
capacity for today? And so for some of us, it's really hard to do that because we are always kind of told what to do. We don't have that skill of self-regulation, of like regulating our creativity. And so that is a skill we can learn. That's why I would love to eventually do like 100-day coaching groups and stuff because like it really helps to have
Yeah.
someone like coach you because if you're not used to it, you'll just kind of fall off. And last thing also for those who kind of have stopped, and so many people tell me I would love to do it, but I fail every year. Like I, really lowering my morale. And I wish we didn't see it as a failure, not getting to 100 days. Like I wish we could see that any amount of days we do in this process is so beneficial. So I would, again, if I would change the name for this project, I wouldn't call it the 100-day project. Like I would, because that kind of gives us this false idea that unless we get 100 days, then it's not worth it. Everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Rashmi says the journey to 100 is, yes, something about the process. Like, honestly, there's people who said, I did 7 days and I couldn't keep on. You did 7 days, that's amazing. And you'll find your own rhythm to get back on it. Last thing,
Yeah.
because I had so many ideas about how I would run the 100-day project, I would split it into segments, like 5 segments. So every 20 days is a different segment. So try doing one segment at a time. And if you quit on one segment, join us the next segment. Join us from day 20 to day 40. And if you can do 5 segments of 20, that's 100. If you do one segment, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
anyway, what I'm saying that there's so many strategies to approach it. But if we have this fixed idea that unless I get to 100, I fail, is like the worst. That is so bad. That's going to keep you blocked. But if you say, hey, I'm going to just do what I can, maybe I get to 20 this year, I'll do it again next year and see what I get to. I think that's a lot more beneficial. And again, you're constantly checking in, you're self-regulating. Why am I doing this? How am I doing it? What is my strength? Let me do more of this. So it's this amazing kind of internal process to recognize your strengths, recognize where you're creative, recognize what pinches. Is a pinch when I share on social media? Does a pinch when I do something out of my comfort zone?
Yeah.
There's so much to it to learn about yourself. And so it's this big, long journey about learning about yourself. And all I want to say is that that is the process. So if you get tired, switch it up, learn something different about yourself.
Yeah.
It's an open-ended answer.
Totally. I love that. I like you mentioned a dialogue with your creativity and asking the
Mhm.
question, what do I have capacity for today? I think that's a
Yeah.
great question to ask rather than what should I, because so often we think, what should I mean, that's a lesson for life in general. Like, what should I be doing today? What am I supposed to be
Mhm.
doing today? At the end of the day, was I productive? That's the question we always ask. And think rather than what do I have the capacity for today? And that's such a beautiful way
Yeah.
to live life. And it creates
Yeah.
that ease. And sometimes I have more capacity, sometimes less capacity. And if I'm thinking about the 100-day project, I'm almost thinking like it's really just 100 days of showing up. And I think
Yes.
that's all that's required
That's
of
it.
me is to
Yeah.
show up.
Mhm.
And I think that sometimes it can literally just be, and I think that's why, sometimes it can be as literal as like day 55. I'm here. I've got nothing else. Thank you. And that's it.
Exactly. That is the
And
perfection of the 100-day project, to
yeah,
be able
and I
to do
think that
that.
you move on and you don't get caught up and get stuck. And because I remember like the first 100-day project I did a couple years ago was the appreciation post. And like, and sometimes I remember it would be like, I live here in Brooklyn with my wife and like, we try to get on a schedule of things like when we get to bed, when we wake up, we're always New York City is such, and this was before pandemic, and so New York City is such a
Yeah.
fast-paced, crazy life. You're sometimes out, you're sometimes leaving at 7 in the morning, getting home at 10, 11 at night, and it's like a crazy paced life. And we're trying always, it's always like the eternal struggle to like get on a schedule and stay
Oh
routine
my
and
gosh.
regulated.
Yeah.
And so Rukmini is like, yeah, I've been in Florida for the last year. I don't miss that. So anyways, so, I would be doing my 100 project and sometimes be like 11 o'clock at night. It's like, okay, I got to do my post. Or, it would be the evening time and it's time for us to spend together. And it's like, oh, I got to do my post now. And I could recognize it's kind of like, it was sometimes disrupt. And I'm like, I'm going to do this 100 days in a row. And I
That
would
was
get to like day 20,
amazing.
day 30. And I'm recognizing like, wow, okay, I'm putting this, it's disrupting some of my other
Mm.
relationships, or I'm prioritizing this above other things that are important to me. And I recognize like, okay, like I may not be able to do this every single day for 100 days. So my first 100-day project, I didn't do it every day.
Okay.
I didn't do, it took me, I don't know how long it took me, but it was more than 100 days because I
Which is
recognized it's like,
supernatural.
yeah, it's like, okay, wow, we're supposed to, it's like evening time where I'm supposed to spend with my partner. And I'm like, I don't got time. I got to do my post. And I'm like, okay, I got to figure out this post. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'm losing the spirit of it a little bit. And then
Yeah.
the next year I got to the place where it's like, okay, I'm going to keep it simple enough. And I was able to do it 100 and 100 days. And this project, you know, it's interesting because a lot of the posts that I'm doing now, it's like 8 o'clock at night, and I'm like, okay, I got to do my post, and I'll put something up there. And it's so interesting because this project has been more widely well received than in any
It
of my
has
other
been.
projects.
Yeah.
And some of the posts, you know, I'm literally just like, okay, I got to put something. Let me find a verse. Let me put a prayer. And I'm like, I'm literally taking like 5 minutes and putting it out there. And it'll get like this huge engagement with people. And it's like, wow, I'm just like, wow, something so simple and just, but genuine. Like
Mm,
it doesn't have to be this big premeditated thing. It can
yes.
just be, it could literally, like a post can literally take 5 minutes or less
Hmm.
on some days. It doesn't have to be, and it's so interesting because I used to write captions for all of my posts, like something to go along with. And the certain post like, I don't have a caption. I'm just going no caption, just day
Yeah.
17 out of 100. That's it, you know.
Hmm.
And so keeping it, not being afraid to keep it simple, is important
Hmm.
too.
That's such a great point. And I'm just thinking, when was the last time I've done 100 in 100 days? The very first 100-day project in 2015, because it was so simple. And since then, I've never been able to do that. It's hard. And I
Yeah.
mean, just for anyone wondering, day 60, day 70, hard. There's
Okay.
like a
Wow.
rhythm.
We're on day
Anyway,
25.
making
We're
us.
doing this because we're one
We're
fourth
doing
of the
it.
way through. We're doing
Exactly.
quarter
One step at a
checkpoints.
time. Yes, we are, which really helps also to celebrate the small wins in between. But
Yeah.
yeah, I love what you said. You want to know what you have capacity for. You don't want your posting to get in the way of life too, because like you said, that ruins the whole point. It's like if your life is getting busy, do a simple post or like let it pause for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's also really important. Looks like we have a question here. Oh, we have so many questions. I didn't even notice. Okay,
I,
let's
I'm
see.
going off of my, one second. I'm back. I went off of do not disturb mode because all my questions and comments and everything I think froze at some point. I wasn't getting any of
Oh,
them.
really? No worries. Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. Okay, so we did talk about this one yet, but do you want to elaborate any more of it on what happens when you get tired of your project or how to stay committed? I
Oh,
guess you kind of mentioned that it can be simple. It doesn't need to be anything too complicated, though.
yeah. If you get tired, I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, I've been thinking a lot of this about in my own personal work is like our feelings are always telling us something, communicating something that we
Hmm,
need. And so, you know, if I'm
interesting.
feeling hunger, that means I need food. If I'm feeling thirsty, that means I need water. If I'm feeling lonely, that means I need connection. If I'm feeling tired,
Yeah.
it means I need rest.
Yes.
And so I think
Yeah.
to honor that and be like, okay, what does rest look like? How am I going to readjust my pace? And I think that to balance that sincerity, determination, not getting complacent, but also honoring my need for rest. And it's like, maybe if I'm tired, maybe I'm running at a pace that isn't sustainable for me, or
Mm,
maybe I need to reconsider my motivation or my intention, and just maybe take some time for reflection and like,
yeah.
you know, because the tiredness, like, I'm curious, like, what is that tiredness? Is it tiredness because I don't have enough time? Like I had a long day?
Mm,
Is it a physical tiredness? Is it a mental tiredness of like, I'm so tired because I'm fretting over what people are going to think and what am I going to
yeah.
create? Is it an emotional tiredness of like
Yeah.
counting the engagement? Like, what kind of tiredness is it? Because if it's a physical
Mm,
tiredness, that's usually the easiest to address. It's like, okay, I need to cut something out of my life to create some more space for
yeah.
sleep and for rest, or I need to do things that
Hmm.
inspire me. But if it's an emotional and mental tiredness, like if it's a physical tiredness, there's something external that I need to adjust in order to get my body rest. If it's a mental or emotional tiredness, there's usually something internal that I need to adjust in order for me to change the way that I'm
Mm,
experiencing my external circumstances. And so if it's a mental or emotional tiredness, I would really take that as a moment of reflection and thinking like, how can I turn down the mental buzzing? How can I calm the emotions in my heart and like maybe relieve myself of a little of the expectation and the pressure? Like maybe I'm just putting too much pressure on myself.
that's such a great answer, Doyle. I feel like that just applies to so many aspects of our life, and especially this project, because this project is such like a self-introspective project that if you're feeling tired, this isn't just another thing that you just push
Hmm.
through and you just keep doing. That's kind of against the point. It's kind of to continuously check in. What is it, when I feel tired, what is it that I need?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
perfect.
I'm not getting any of the comments, by the way, so I don't know if people are asking questions. I'm gonna have to manage the chat
Oh,
board.
really? Oh, there's so many.
Yeah,
Oh, somehow there's a lot of
it stopped.
love and questions and appreciations.
It
That's fine.
stopped for
It'll
some
keep you from
reason on
being
mine
distracted.
a long
I
time
won't.
ago.
Well,
Yeah,
there's a
I mean,
lot
I'd
of,
love
we
to
have
engage,
Miranda
but for
here
some
saying,
reason it
so,
stopped at mine.
well, there's a lot of people saying, save this post, or I appreciate this, your post, environmental grad student
Love
here
you
from
guys.
Miranda. Please save this video. Yeah, thank you all. It's so nice. Jitesh said it's not about the result, it's about the endeavor, that learns through the process. So true. And I think that's so much of what we're saying.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you, everyone. So this has been awesome. I think we've shared so much. Is there
yeah.
anything else
One
that
more thing I
comes
will
up
share
for
about
you?
that also,
Yeah.
and I think this is a powerful part of the 100-Day Project, and I know that you've experienced this and you can speak to it also, is that when you're feeling tired, use that as fuel for your content. Like,
Hmm.
post that, share that,
Oh, yeah.
take it as a moment of vulnerability, and just be like, day 25 out of 100, you know, I don't have anything today. I'm just feeling really tired.
Yeah.
Bus, finished, you know?
Yeah.
And you
Amazing.
can
See, that
just
is the
post that and let
core.
people know. It's like, okay, that's all I have capacity for. And I think that that's where we get out of our head and just recognize. And you may do that for 5 days, you know?
Wow.
And so I
Yeah.
think that, let that be the fuel for your content as well. Like, and
Mm.
share that with people.
Hmm.
So that's another thought. Anyways,
Yeah. Oh,
should we
sorry. I just
ask
had
another
to.
question? Are there more questions coming in?
Let me see. There was, okay. I'm getting a comment from Shivana saying, I'm loving both of your 100-day projects. So inspiring. The fear of not creating something perfect stops me from creating. How do I overcome this and detach from the result? Similar to what
Yeah,
you said, but would you like to
totally.
elaborate
I
more on
think
it?
again, I think detaching from the results is, and I posted something about this similarly. It may have been even last night's post the one before, but like really striving for inner rewards and seeing through the false
Mm,
promises of outer achievements and looking
yeah.
beyond the false fears of public failure. I think that really
Hmm.
sums up the 100-Day Project in a
Beautiful.
nutshell. It's
I want
really
you to
about
say that
what.
again. So
Well,
good.
I think it's the most. It's a post I did yesterday, the day before, about,
Okay.
because this is how actually the word yoga itself is defined in the Bhagavad Gita as
Mm,
um, you know acting, but with a sense of detachment from external rewards of success or failure, etc. And
mm,
based on that verse, I wrote a prayer that said, may I be driven by inner rewards. May I see through the false promises of outer achievements, and
yeah.
may I look past or look beyond the false fears of public failure. And so I think that when you
So
are detached from
good.
the results, it's like really looking like, what are the inner rewards I'm looking for? And really the rewards are things that nobody else is really going to see. And I
Mm,
have to learn to
that's it.
validate that for myself and
Wow.
recognize that, like, what I'm really looking for. I think that I'm looking for something external, because there's a
Mm,
difference between needs and wants. Needs are universal, and they're things that we all need. I need acceptance, I need validation, I need connection, etc. The wants are the things that we tell ourselves are going to get us that need. Like, I need acceptance and connection, and therefore I want a lot of people to like my posts because I've built up the narrative that's going to give me that. And I think
yeah.
that spiritual and emotional maturity started to create that space and recognize, like, whoa, there are a lot of different ways to fill this need. And this
Mm,
is just the one that I've locked in on. And I can pull back
mm,
and be like, okay, I want people to like this post or to create or give me validation because I think it's going to fill a certain need of mine to be connected, to be stable, to be fulfilled. But actually, like, I can start to look at broader options and recognize I don't need that to fill this need. I want that, but that's different. And there may be other ways for me to fulfill my inner needs that don't involve a certain amount of response or validation from others. And
mm.
so I think it's a process of really identifying the inner rewards that I'm driving myself for, and expanding my understanding of how I can achieve that.
So beautiful, Doyle. That was all gold. I want to just save that and hear it again, but I love it. The inner rewards. That's kind of the essence of everything. And that is kind of the essence of this project too. It's not about striving for that external reward or how is it going to look like, or like you said,
Yeah.
when you're tired, just post that. That is so hard to
Yeah.
do because the ego is so wired to want to be seen as perfect, as competent. And so, but that's
Yeah.
where like the real growth happens, that real internal meaningful
Totally.
growth. And like you said, no one sees that. That internal growth
No.
is, a friend of mine, Ratsnath, would say that it's like the unglamorous inner work. It's
Yeah.
unglamorous. We can glamorize the external work and the body and take the selfies, but like the real stuff, that ego work, that is not
Yeah.
glamorous.
There's no
And
background music to it.
there's no background music, but that is
Yeah.
the real stuff. And I think if you
Totally.
have a community around you who is also doing that together and keeps you motivated and just keeps reminding you. So again, people are saying how to keep up with motivation, how to stay disciplined. It's that continuous showing up, but I think it's showing up with others. Like when I see your posts, I get inspired. Like this conversation is super inspiring. And when I remember that it's about that internal journey. What am I learning as I show
Yes.
up every day? What am I teaching by feeling that pinch of vulnerability by sharing something I'm not ready to share or doesn't
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
quite
Yeah.
right? There are lessons in all of that. But if you don't see the lessons, you're just going to be like, oh, I don't, this is uncomfortable. I can't do
Yeah.
it. But the
Yeah.
lessons are really, really important.
Yeah. And it's super powerful. Like in the project that I'm doing now, um, and I supposed to share this a little bit of my story. Like I've always kept social media at an arm's length. Like I've had this
Mm.
love-hate relationship. And to be honest with you, like because I'm also like I'm a yoga teacher and I lead retreats sometimes and I do courses or I do different things and I teach kirtan and so every now and then when I'm doing something, I use social media as a tool to let people know about it. And I recognize if I'm just going on there every few months to post something that I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing, no one's going to see it because you've got to build regular engagement. So it was kind of like the only reason I'm on social media is because I'm just
Mm.
trying to share through what I'm doing and stuff. But like, I never really got to a place where I was creating content or putting stuff out there because it was just such a mind game. Aside from the 100-day project, it was such a mind game, and I just like I don't want to like enter into that arena and get like anxiety and building, etc. I didn't want to do anything that wasn't authentic to me. And so it wasn't until just recently, near the end of last year, like in the fall, where I actually for the first time started to just kind of try to produce some of my own content. It wasn't related to the 100-day project. Trying to share a little bit my own journey with mental
Yeah.
health, emotional sobriety, etc. And I just started to put some content out there. I was trying to brand it in a certain way and format it and looking at other social media accounts that I'm inspired by and just trying to put something out there. And I'd like very little but sweet responses from people. And then this 100-day project came along and I was like, I really want to do this because it's like a commitment, it's inner growth, it's my connection with Rukmini. I want to show that support. And then I was like, well, what am I gonna? It's gonna kind of derail this journey that I'm having. That for the first time ever, I'm trying to actually build something with my social media account. And I was like, what am I gonna do? And I was trying to keep it, not get into like spiritual or God, or try to keep it a little more secular. And then it got to a place where it's like literally, and I told you this before, Rukmini, when we were talking,
Yeah.
because I just like after the first post or two of my 100-day project this time around, I immediately regretted it. I was
Yeah.
like, why did I start this? I've got 3 months of like posting something that it's going to be totally random. People aren't going to connect with it. It's going to seem weird, and it's going to be this weird thing that's not going to get any engagement. It's like, okay, I'm just setting myself back 3 months. Let me just get through this, and after 3 months, I'll get back on trying to like build my feed and whatever like this. And so, but I was like, I'm just going to just start putting it out there for whatever. And then as I got going, I recognized I had that experience I spoke about earlier where it was like, okay, it may not be a broad reach, but the people that do connect with it on a deep level. And it's kind of
Mm.
like for my friends and my spiritual family and people, like it's meaningful to them. So then it was like, okay, this is my offering. This is my service to like
Mm.
the people. It's not like the broad, wide appeal. It's for people that like, really want to have something deep and substantial. So it's smaller, but it's going to be meaningful. And so that's kind of where I was like, okay, let me just do that. It's an ego pinch because it's not going to be something big and grand. And then it just kind of happened to be that this is like somehow reaching more people than anything that I've
Oh,
ever done.
totally. You got
It's,
like hip hop artists and celebrities resharing your work. I saw those screenshots.
I saw
Yeah.
this. It was so cool. There's a guy, I forget his name. I'm sorry, I forget your name. I think it's Steven Jackson, but it's _STAK5. He's a former professional basketball player that I found and discovered because he was very active you know, after the murdering of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, social activists and Black rights. And so he had a really lot of meaningful people started following him. And just a couple of days ago, there was a picture of him. And this is like a professional basketball player who was like successful. Like he may even be, I don't know if he's a Hall of Famer or an all-star, but he was really good in his trade. He's retired now. And there's a picture of him in a room, and he's dressed in a full Muslim outfit. I don't know, you know, what it's called. And he's got, you know, the head covering and a full outfit. And he's on his knees and he's praying, and he says, "Make prayer cool again."
Oh,
You know,
wow.
like, let's do it. You know, and I was like, that is so cool. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Like, you know, and I was like, wow. And it was like meaningful. And I just thought like, wow, there's a lot of people that can connect with prayer and the idea of releasing the ego and surrendering to a higher power. And so I started out thinking like this project is a dud. It's just a 3-month little thing I got myself into. Just get through it and move on and get back to the real work. And then it was like people more than any ever of like, you know, connecting with what's being put out there. And so you never really know what's going to come up. Don't judge yourself based off of what you think other people are like. Just be genuine. Show up each day. And then you get into the it's like, okay, somebody liked that post a lot. Now how do I make more posts like that? And it's like, no, I'm getting into the game again. Like, just keep posting. Don't think that like you've got to crack some formula.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just keep being you.
So awesome. I love that story, Doyal. Thank you for sharing it, because that's what inspired this whole call, is when I told Doyal and I saw his 100-day project just like being shared by Willow Smith and all these people. I was like, whoa, bro, like your project is really taking off. Like thousands of people are like sharing your prayers. And then he told me like, well, you know, the minute I started this project, I regretted it because I thought no one would be into it. And I thought it wouldn't connect with others. And it just did the opposite. So I love stories like that. I've had my own. And I often quote, you know, what is most personal is most universal.
Yes.
So when you do something that's so deeply personal, meaningful for yourself and a small crew, likely it's going to be meaningful for others. And because you're really already, you're kind of ego pinching yourself because you're like, I don't know, you know, prayer, like people going to be into it, God. And then you did it. And it's just like, it's coming from such a place of no expectation. I think it makes it that much more powerful, which is really beautiful. I remember 2018, I did the same with the Enneagram. I just fell in love with the Enneagram. It's this powerful personality system. I wanted to draw it for 100 days. And I just felt like, no one knows what this obscure system is. Like, I'm going to lose followers. And then, you know, I had like 5,000 followers at the time. At the end of the project, I gained like 30,000. I mean, there was like this undercover mine, and people just like ready for that. It put me on the map a little bit. But the point was, I was so grateful I started from a place of no expectation, because if I came at it like, oh, this is the new trending thing, I'm going to just trend with that. It's going to really burn you out. It's not sustainable. So finding what's sustainable means finding what's genuine for you.
Yeah, I would never post half or a fraction of any of the posts that I've posted thus far if I had to curate them and think about what are people looking for, what will, like, you know, there's a certain point, like, because again, most of the time it's like at night, it's like, okay, I got to do it, and I'm not going to give myself tons of time. I've got to finish this. I got to go spend time with my family, who is my wife and my puppy, and I got to just like kind of turn down for the night. And so, you know, I'm like, okay. And I look at it and just like, okay, like this has just got to be good enough. This is just good enough. I'm posting it, you know, as opposed to thinking it's got to be perfect. And I think that, you know, I think that's really what it's about.
Yeah, I love that. I want to just, because I don't think you can see the comments, but I want to share.
I can. I don't know why I can't. I can't see any
Well,
comments.
there's a lot of love coming your way, and I want to send you some extra.
There's no love coming on my side.
Oh, no. Well, here we have Rashmi saying this is so refreshing. Someone saying, love your work. Prem is saying, thank you so much. This is such a reward. Thank you. This really helped. Radhika Harsha is saying, thank you for this, such an incredible point. Beecha is here. We have one question. Maybe we can end on that as we end from left hand, right mind. I think that's you, Monica. What does internal validation look like for you versus external validation? Really great question.
That is powerful. Do you want to take a stab at that first?
You go first, because that's a hard question.
So the question is, what does internal validation look like as opposed to external validation? Yeah. I think it starts off by recognizing first that, you know, I can't, first of all, and we know this, it's, you know, intuition, but like I can't control what anybody does outside of me. So I can't control if people like, I can't even control if my parents like me, or if my family, if my kids like me,
Mm.
or if my friends betray me, etc. Like I can't control any of that. And so it starts with the recognition that like if I put my power in other people's hands of how I feel about myself, I'm just literally stepping onto a roller coaster.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
that's just the reality of, you know what I mean, of just recognizing that aspect first and foremost. So that therefore then points me to the direction, okay, there's got to be another way to find stability other than depending upon the recognition or response from other people, because that's just an emotional roller coaster. And I think internal validation comes, I'll kind of juxtapose a little bit. External
Mm.
validation is very volatile.
Hmm.
It
Meaning always
spikes.
changing.
Yeah, it spikes and it dips. There's an
Wow.
undercurrent of anxiety,
Yeah.
and there's a general feeling of instability. And I think that internal validation is a lot more quiet. It's steady, and it's much more from a grounded place that it's a sort of reassurance that I'm able to give myself that is not pride, it's not arrogance, and I genuinely really think my personal experience and belief is that internal validation is really, it's something spiritual. I don't think it can be
Mm.
divorced from
Yeah.
the awareness of my spiritual essence and the awareness of a higher spiritual power that I am connected to.
Mm.
This idea of we all have a need to be seen. I mean, that's
Mm.
validation. It's to be
Yeah.
seen. And so for me to actually, there's a witness in the heart that is
Mm.
seeing me, and that is most important for me to feel seen by and for me to
Mm.
interact with. And so I think that inner validation, it's, we're never alone. We're never ever alone. And I think for us to, even when we're in a room by ourselves, we're not alone. And for us to
Mm.
connect to that inner part of ourselves, because the soul by nature is, you know, in Sanskrit we use these words sat chit ananda. The soul itself is full of joy and is
Mm.
cognizant and is ever existing. And so our nature, our being, our sense of self, beneath all the rubble of everything that we've piled on top of false identities and needing to validate ourselves externally, the soul is itself naturally happy and content,
Mm.
and there's peace. It's not something we have to impose
So
upon it.
beautiful.
It's really a
Yeah.
process. I think the internal validation is really a process of not imposing something external or artificial or that wasn't there. It's really a moment of clearing everything else out of the
Wow.
way and
Yeah.
giving yourself some quiet time to just experience your genuine inner nature. And it's scary at times because it's like when I let go of all the things, it's like when I take the training wheels off, when I put the crutches down, I feel like I'm going to fall or I'm going to crash.
Mm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually like learning to sit with that, put that down, and the feeling of fear that comes with, oh my God, I'm putting all the external crutches aside, and then learning to be held internally by that higher spiritual power, by your divine eternal self, and recognizing that, wow, I don't actually need all the things I thought I needed to just be and to breathe and to feel held and feel seen. Let me
Mm.
just bask in that for a moment. Let me just create space for what it feels, to that beating of my heart, the coming in and out of my breath, and the experience of my actual inner self, which itself is fully fulfilled, fully sat. You're already fulfilled. You're already fully self-satisfied. You are just not giving yourself the space to experience it because you've put so many other distractions. There's a beautiful verse. I've been quoting this a lot in my classes and with conversations. A beautiful verse. It's from the Bible. Jesus speaks, "It is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of heaven." And
Mm.
some people say it's like, okay, this analogy, like, ooh, like how's a camel going to fit through the eye of a needle?
Yeah.
But some historians actually claim that the eye of the needle was actually a gate, a physical
Mm.
gate that led into the city of Jerusalem.
Wow.
And people would travel with camels. They were pack animals that you can you can put luggage and baggage and all sorts of stuff on. But in order for the camel to pass through that passageway, you had to get off the camel and you had to take all the baggage off so that the camel could actually fit through that
Wow.
eye of the needle. And so
Huh.
really also what some historians claim is that when he makes that point, it's not some far-out analogy of like fitting, you know, a camel through the eye of a sewing needle, but it's
Yeah.
actually you have to take all the baggage off. You have to
Wow.
get off the camel and you have to take all the bags off, and only you as a soul can fit through that God-shaped hole in your heart. And I think
Mm.
that is what the internal validation looks like. It's where I create the inner space for me to put everything aside
Wow.
and turn off the lights of the external world and just sit with myself and recognize I am enough. Everything I need is within me. And I'm not just telling myself that I have some like self-affirming motivational fluff. It's just real. And it's real
Yeah.
for everybody. And so I think that's
Mm.
part of what it means to, and then what will happen is you will experience, as I love Rukmini used that word earlier, the shine, you will experience that shine of the self. It's
Mm.
evident, it's there. Like if you walk into a hot room, you will feel the heat. I'm in New York City right now. It's freezing outside. If I step outside, I will feel the cold. I don't have to do anything to feel the cold. I just have to go and be in it. I used to be a
Wow.
chef, and we went to Boston once and cooked for a wedding, and there's a walk-in
Yeah.
fridge and a walk-in freezer. You walk into that walk-in fridge, you will feel cold. You sit
Yeah.
and create time with yourself, you will feel that validation. You will feel, first you're going to feel all of the inner conflict of all of
Mm.
the crap that you,
Yeah.
forgive me for saying, but you've caked on. I'm stupid, I'm not worthy, I'm a failure, all that
Yeah.
stuff. And then you sit long and you to burrow through all of that. You will feel the warmth of your soul. You will feel the validation of your inner self. But it takes practice, and it's a
Mm.
muscle we have to flex. And be patient and gentle with yourself. And that's part of the 100-day project. You get there one day at a time.
Wow. So that was incredible. We have so much love here from everyone saying, so true, so beautifully put. That was just the essence of it all. I mean, what you said,
Yeah.
that internal validation, you don't need to get anything. You already are. And it's
Yeah.
really about removing what isn't serving and just coming into
Yes.
that place. And external validation is that distraction that we put on ourselves. And
Yes.
so to get to that internal place, like you said, you can't divorce it also from your spiritual essence. So it's a very
Yes.
spiritual, beautiful experience to
Yes.
come back and recognize who you really are, that quiet whisper that you're not someone who needs all these things, that is just what the ego and the mind constantly puts on us. But coming back to that place is like that quiet whisper of real satisfaction. It's a
Yeah.
lifetime journey. We will get little glimpses of it. We can do it better in community, but it is, yeah, it's beautiful. And we can get it through so many places. You can get it through the 100-Day Project, which is amazing.
The 100-day project, a successful project begins thinking that I need to create things that other people are going to like and ends with I don't need to do anything in order